Hey, Walter Sorrells back with another Pops Project of the Month, where I get schooled by master knife maker Alan Surls. So today, fun departure from my usual routine. I'm about to hop in the car and head out to Pops Knife Supply to get outside my comfort zone and make a stag-handled knife with master blade maker Alan Surls. And we're doing it at the in-house knife making shop at Pops. Now, Alan's an excellent knife maker, but he's also one of the partners at Pops Knife Supply, which by total and utter coincidence happens to be sponsoring today's video. So before we get cranked up though, let's hear from Alan himself.
Hey, my name is Alan Surls. I'm a knife maker and one of the partners here at Pops Knife Supplies. I've been making knives for about 13 years now. Going through a wild time in my life, decided to make a knife. Found an old kitchen knife and reshaped it and put a stag handle on it and just fell in love ever since then. I've made about 3,200 to 3,300 knives in my life so far. Anything from a simple EDC, everybody carries kind of deal, or a Skinner, up to a dagger that a Prince owns. Today we're going to be making one of my models called the Stag-Handled. It's a very simple knife. It's a trailing point, and we're going in from the blade itself out of 8670 into a copper guard, black G10 spacer with some sambar stag on the back.
To jumpstart the project, Alan's gone ahead and done the easy part of the project, profiling the knife, which I've shown you about a zillion times in my videos before. So next, Alan's going to get to work on the blade.
Figure out my thickness of my steel, calculate to leave me 40 thousandths for preheat treat grind, scribe it, drill the hole, and go grind. Alright, so the next thing is, now that we got our grind line scribed, it doesn't have to be precise, you can eyeball it, but we'll go ahead and figure out where our pinhole will be. Typically I'll do at least a 3/16 hole, or if it's a larger knife with a wider tang, I'll go with a 1/4 inch hole. Now, this is going to seem confusing, but I'm only going to be using an 1/8 inch pin to put the knife together. And I'll show you why later on. But go ahead and drill a 3/16 hole. Alright, so now we've got the hole drilled, we're going to go over the chamfer in a bit and just kind of chamfer down the hole a little bit. Alright, so the first thing we got to do is grind to our lines that we scribed a few minutes ago. We just need to put a 45 on it. Typically I'll use an old belt, that way you don't knock all the grit off right away. And then we'll start moving the grind up. All of my knives, unless I'm doing something big or 1/4 inch or 3/16 thick, I start with an 8.
Okay.
I have more control over it, it's a flatter surface. Some guys like 50s, some guys like 60s. I just always land it on 8.
Okay.
Unless, like I said, I'm doing some kind of big chopper or whatnot. Right. Well, we'll get started real quick. Right. You don't have to run wide open, depending on what grinder you got. I do about 50. Grinding torque too hot.
Today's video is, of course, sponsored by Pops Knife Supply, your source for all things knife making. Everything we used for today's build was from Pops. They've got everything from steel to specialty tools to abrasives, handle materials, including Stag, of course, you name it. Also, cool feature of Pops, and this is why it's really nice to actually stop by the store, they got a full knife shop there with this big old window that from the showroom you can look in and you can watch guys making knives and, you know, really get inspired by some of the stuff that they're doing there in the store. And that means if you need advice about, you know, belts or grinders or handle material or how to heat treat some of the steel that you buy from them, you just call and they'll get you on track. Pops Knife, bladesmith.supplies. All right, let's get back and see what Alan's up to.
All right, so now we got our pre-heat treat grinds done. Everything looks good. Now, I want to give a slight taper on the tang. That way when the guard goes on, it kind of gives a force fit. Then we'll clean up our flats just a little bit for when texturing that way, because we're not doing any sanding on the flats after heat treat. All right, so we'll start at the tip and kind of set our angle and work it up a little bit. Then we have a little taper in there. Slowly working it up. Touch with the thumb, get the flat full cleaned up. And one more time. Good to go.
Now, do you go up this way, or do you go down?
I go tip up all the way. That way, I can see the distance from the tip off the belt and control my angle. So go ahead and make your tip off a little bit, that way you grind more on the tang first. So you get a little bit of a taper.
So you're starting with the taper and then
work it up.
Work it up.
That should be good to go. Boom. Now we got it all cleaned up, we'll go over and texture it. Alright, so we got our flats cleaned up, and like I was saying earlier, I like to have a textured finish for my final blade. We've made this texturing hammer, lasered in just a random pattern, kind of looks like the forge finish almost. You don't want to strike it too hard because basically we're cold forging, but I'm going to do the rock test. Got a little bit right there, we'll give it one whack. It's pretty straight.
Oh, hey, quick note, if you like the way Alan's knife's shaping up, it'll be available for purchase on my website, tacticsarmory.com. It's a really nice knife, and it's also a cool piece of, memorabilia, a keepsake, whatever. I mean, this is the only one in the world that's like this, and the only one that, has showed up on this video. So you'll be the only person in the world who can say that they have the knife made in today's video. Now, obviously, this is basically Alan's knife, Alan's work, but, I pitched in a couple places, so it's sort of a collab as well, which is kind of a cool thing.
All right, so we got our blade pre-heat treat ground. Now it's time to heat treat, but I'm going to coat it with some nuclear to help with keep the decarb down. Real easy to use. Do a good coating all over it, especially your edge. You can let it air dry, or I like to cheat. A little propane to it. Alright, so what we got is our nuclear no scaleless drive. Help with the decarb. It's ready to go in the oven. The oven is already at the temperature, 1550. We're going to throw it in there, set a timer for about 6 minutes. Break out the trusty phone, set timer for 6 minutes. Then we'll pull it out, throw it in the quench. So we already have AAA and Park 50 set up. For the 8670, you can use either one. I typically go for the Park 50, just get a little bit more Rockwell. In and out, and then into our quench plates.
Explain what this thing's for.
Alright, so you get most of your cooling done in the oil, and then we go into the little plates. Get that final cool down, number one. And number two, the plates help keep things from warping. So with aluminum, it cools it even more fast, and it's going to be ready to roll in about 2 seconds. Alright, so we've hardened the steel. Went through the austenizing temperature, and we quench it. And actually the steel is almost to the point where it's brittle. So what we're going to do now is go into the temper cycle and kind of relax the steel so it's not as brittle, but it's still hard. For the 8670, we're going to do it at 375 for 2 hours, let it cool back down, and then do it again for 2 hours. And you can leave it 8670 harder than most steels, but it all comes down to the knife. So if you're doing a kitchen knife, you want to leave it harder so you have more keen edge. But a working knife, this is like a Skinner or EDC kind of knife, you want it a little bit more forgiving, 59, 60. And so the 375 will achieve that for us. Knife's out of heat treat, we've tempered it. Now we need to get ready for grinding the final grinds on it. And typically when it comes out of heat treat, it's going to have, because of the oil, a good black surface. But I still like to go ahead and grab a Sharpie. You can use die-chem, you can use what you want. And make sure I got everything nice and dark. So when I scribe that line, it jumps out at me. The same as before, I'll go ahead and make sure it's 0. Looks good. Get the height. We're at 130, so half of 130 is 65. Mark it down to 65. And then we'll just scribe the line down the center. Flip it over, make sure we're dead center. I like to go down to about 10,000th, maybe a little less. That way you get a nice clean edge all the way down, and the more you sharpen it, you're not getting into fatter steel over the years. That way it's pretty keen. So we have a good edge marked down the center, and we're ready to grind. Alright, so the die-chem is dried on the copper. I'm going to take a set of dial calipers, measure the width, go ahead and mark a center line down this copper piece. Then come back and we'll measure the width of our tang. The biggest point, we're roughly at 545. We'll lock that in. Now I'll just scribe 2 lines on the copper. So I got my center line, and then how wide I need to make the slot, or how long I need to make the slot for the tang to fit through. And we'll take that over to the milling machine. Alright, you don't have to have a milling machine. It just happens to work out a lot easier. You can drill several holes down your center line and then go back and hand file it. But if you got the mill, use it. Alright, so we're out of heat treat. And we got our center line marked. We want to start moving the grind up and clean up the steel. I like to use an old 80 grit for the initial cleanup, just because all that crud gets in there. I don't want to ruin a good belt.
Right.
So I'm going to start off with the 80, and then we'll go up to the belt progression. We'll do a 120, an A100 with a trick, and then a Deerfoos felt back 400. And we'll be done. We're doing a satin finish on this knife. That's all we got to do. Alright, so now I changed over to the next belt after the 120. This is a Trizac A100. And it's got the raised grain structure. And this is going to look crazy, but the first thing I do is take an old belt, wide printed, and actually round the edges. And what this will do is, when I go into grind, I can actually push the belt sideways into the plunge line and get a nice clean swoop. We'll do that next. I'm actually using the side of the actual belt to cut my plunge in. Then I'll go back on the other side and swoop in again, because you never want a straight 90-degree angle. We got both sides ground with the A100, nice smooth satin finish. We use the edge of the belt to make our plunge line swoop in. And now we'll go to the final belt, which is a 400 grit with the felt back. The felt back helps the belt meld right into every spot and give a nice uniform, smooth finish. The higher grit you go, you want to actually slow your speed down so you don't generate as much heat. There's a couple quick passes. Alright, so we got our blade all ground, finished ground, spines all cleaned up and ready. Now we just need to make sure our shoulders are square for the guard and clean up the tang. I use a carbide file guide. Bill Benke makes these. What I'm going to do is just slide the knife right in there and leave just a little bit of the shoulders that were already there exposed. Now we got the two shoulders cut. We don't want it perfectly 45. We'll give a little sweep at the end here. Our shoulders cleaned up on the blade, and now we're ready to start getting everything ready. Took the copper that we cut the slot in and just used a ball peen hammer, give some texture, just something a little extra flair. And now we're going to see how it fits. Pretty darn close. I'm going to take this little handy tool, a buddy of mine maybe, and we use it like this and drive the guard the rest of the way. And now we have a nice tight fit. So we're good on the guard. I've got a little piece of 30 thousandths G10 to cut a slot in it. That'll be a little spacer for us. And then we're going to use Stag for this handle. Pretty good shape for it. So first thing we got to do is clean out a slot for the tang to actually fit in. And then I'm going to use one of these Black Dragon brooches to actually make a slot to match the tang itself. So we'll go ahead and drill that out and then put the rest of the keyhole in and see how it looks. 3/16 drill bit. Plenty of depth there. And where the hole is, we can go back in and just start cutting the slot. Alright, so we got the tang to go in, but now we got to start working on making sure our angles are the same for the blade, the guard, the spacer, and the stag. And it looks like the top of the stag is hitting before the bottom is. So we'll go real quick to the grinder and straighten that angle up so that everything goes nice and flush and even. Some people will just sit it on a piece of sandpaper and drag it. I can't do that. I always get all funky. I'm about better luck on the grinder. Alright, so we got everything lined up, and at this point you got two different options. With today's epoxy, you really don't need a pin. But for the sake of the video, I'm going to show you how I pin these and why I chose to use a larger hole than it will be for the 1/8 inch pin. That's 3/16. Another quick thing is, a lot of people say you got to drill all the pith out of the antler. I don't agree with that. I think it works as a honeycomb, and as long as you get enough epoxy in there, it's just plenty of structure right there. With some of the backs of these, if I'm not putting a butt cap on, which most of the time I don't, before I get close to glue up, I'll take some CA glue and just coat the whole tail end of where the pith is.
Oh, nice.
That way,
and you're just letting it soak right down into there.
soak in there, and what it does is it prevents, when we glue up the actual epoxy and the blade in, and it's stored in the upright position to dry, none of the epoxy can come out the tail end. So it's like basically making a butt cap in itself. Alright, so the 3/16 hole, but we're going to be using an 1/8 inch pin. And a buddy of mine, Dirk Lutz, taught me this. Drill that hole, chamfer it, and then get a piece of brass after heat treat. Kind of.
You're just peening that in there so it mushrooms around.
That's correct. Don't over peen, because yes, you can crack your blade. So now we got a piece of brass stuck in there. So when we go to drill the pin, we can drill through the brass instead of trying to drill through hardened steel. Alright, so now we're going to drill the hole and go ahead and slide our guard on. And the spacer we're going to finish with is a 30,000th piece of G10. However, I'm going to drill it with a 15,000th G10 spacer on there. I'll explain in a second. Go ahead and set it in the drill press vise. Double check, make sure it's level. And what we're going to do is line up the drill bit to be in the hole in the center of the brass.
And then clamp it down.
Yep. Alright, so we got everything clamped, double checked, looks in the center of the brass. Now, you got to be careful when you're doing this part. If it was just a straight block of wood, it'd be no problem, you got a flat surface. Stag, it sometimes will try to walk on you. So carefully slide on your stag. Make sure you're in there all the way, good. Just ease into the stag so it doesn't try to turn on you. That was really wants to move. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to grab a brand new bit.
Another neat little trick is you can use an end mill and just go flat down on here and then swap it out for the drill bit. That's all you need right there.
Okay, so nice get a little spring clamp to hold the stag in the vertical position so we can get glue in there. And I told you earlier that we used a 15,000 spacer when we drilled. We're going to take that off. Now it's time for 30,000. What that's going to do is when we put the stag back on, when we drive the pin, it forces everything tighter. So now what we got to do is make sure everything is clean. Grab some acetone. Into the blade, tang, even the little shoulders. Alright, so we're ready to put some epoxy in place. Let's go ahead and mix some up real quick. Make sure you get a good mix on it. What I like to do is have whatever the handle material is at an angle, so that way when I drip glue into it, I don't create air pockets. And it can just drip on down. I like to put in more than I'll ever need. Alright, we're going to let that drift down a little bit. It doesn't matter if you're doing a full tang, a hidden tang, every component that is being glued needs to have glue actually spread on it. Apply that on, and you can see I got a lot of glue built up at the top, but we'll clean that in a minute. Put glue on both sides of the spacer. Alright. You can see we're getting a little bit of glue coming out the sides.
And what kind of solvent do you like using for cleaning glue?
Acetone. I use acetone for everything. And then after this, when we do the final cleanup, I'll actually get a toothbrush and clean it. Acetone with a toothbrush. Alright, I like to put my fingers over the pinholes to start with. You're going to get a lot of push out. You can control how much comes out of each direction, that way you have good saturation. And make sure the glue primarily stays in the knife instead of coming out. Alright, now we got a nice flush fit. Then we'll go ahead and take the pin. We'll just lightly drive it right through, and because I was applying pressure and we changed spacers, it made everything super tight. Alright, so next up, we need to just go ahead and start rough shaping this, starting with the guard. Because we don't want the glue to get too hot, we're going to run at a slower speed, and also I'm going to start off with a 36.
Okay.
So that we can get most of it knocked off, and then we'll start fine-tuning it.
And I noticed you have a respirator and a mask here. Tell me about that.
So, when I'm doing the hand material, I prefer to wear a mask, and I've adapted the optimizer to it too, so I can get in fine details. I've had some rough days when I didn't wear a mask and couldn't breathe for the next 2 days. So. Now I've gone to a slack belt, so there's no plait behind it. Scalloped belt, so the belt will flex more. So I can go in the radiuses a little easier, and it gives a nice smooth finish. So I cut it in with a small wheel.
And you're using a scallop belt.
Right, and you just work it together. And it'll flex to whatever shape you want it to almost. Just keep working it till it's all good transition. Try to keep my teardrop shape. So this is what we call the super wheels. They have abrasive built into the fibers of the wheels. They're like a flap wheel almost. This one's a 400 and this one's a 600. And even though you got a nice 400 grit belt finish, the finish that comes off of these, they're not made for grinding by any means, but they give a very nice, uniform, smooth finish, and they can work in because they got give in them. A lot of people go up and they go to the buffer on this and make it super polished. But the way I look at it is, I've never seen a deer or elk or sambar out in the wild that had highly polished antlers. So I go for a satin like it's been fighting or rubbing on trees or whatever. It just gives a real nice look to it.
All right, so I'm here back in my own shop pretending to just be back from Pops. Of course, I got back a couple days ago and recorded all this stuff after the fact, but that's the magic of the interwebs for you. Anyway, so fun little adventure. It was great hanging out with Alan and the other guys at Pops. And of course, it was a real treat watching Alan make a type of knife that, you know, I rarely, well, frankly, I never make knives like that. So, beautiful knife, beautiful piece of stag, and I don't know about you, but I learned a ton. And like I said, if you want to pick up the actual knife that Alan made today, check out the specials page at my website, tacticsarmory.com. Obviously, the money will go to Alan, not to me, but you know, he'll ship that knife right out to you. It's good to jump right on these demo knives because they usually sell out in a couple hours. So link in the cards and description, tacticsarmory.com, the specials page. And also, you can also find Alan's work at wasurlsknives.com. And as you can see down there, his name is spelled completely differently from mine, though sometimes people confuse us. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate your hanging out with me and Alan. I'll be back by myself next week. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe and make sure that you click on that bell so you get notified of all the latest videos. Want to buy a knife from me? Check out my modern blades at tacticsarmory.com. Digging the channel? You can support our video making efforts on Patreon. You know, I've been banging away on these videos for like 10 years, so I hope you'll show some love for all that hard work. Link in the cards and descriptions. Finally, if you're interested in making Japanese swords, check out my full line of Japanese sword videos where I show how to forge Japanese swords as well as how to polish them and how to make fittings, handles, and scabbards. WalterSorrellsBlades.com.